I think of myself as Jack in Titanic, where it's like, you know, I don't have any funds, but I can kind of manipulate the classes with enough suaveness, kind of know how to fight. You know, I can draw very well, like Jack in Titanic. I can, you know, I'm an incredible sensualist, but can also have fun, can be like a hard partier and a drinker, but also get the work done. You know, there's like so many good qualities about that character, but that are so like blown out of proportion. He's just so perfect in that movie.
And no one sees your blazer jacket fall on your hips like I see. So Jack in Titanic, and when we were young we could see. We barrel roll over jeeps, and I learned to fall off from that steep. So now I partner police and fight for you and me and Jack in Titanic.
Welcome to This Broken Mixtape, the podcast that rewinds and presses play on the soundtrack to your life. I'm Jeff Wu.
And I'm Justin Lee.
The buzz for New York art punk band Bodega began brewing months before their debut album was even announced. Signed to acclaimed independent punk label, What's Yr Rupture, much of the hype surrounding the band can be attributed to their phenomenal live show. We sat down with Benji, Hozie, and Nikki Belfiglio of Bodega to discuss how the debut album explores their love-hate relationship with technology, the hypocrisy of cinephilia, and how Nikki's public masturbation as a child inspired the song Gyrate.
This week on the show, we have two members from Bodega. Please introduce yourself.
Nikki Belfiglio.
I'm Ben Hozie.
Welcome to the show, guys.
Thank you.
So this is your first tour outside of New York, is that correct?
No, actually, we went to Europe in May.
Okay.
So we had like 2 weeks there, and then earlier than that, we did a week with Franz Ferdinand, and then right before that, we did South by Southwest. So
Right.
South by Southwest was actually the first tour outside of New York, and that was only in March. So it's been like a good like
Have you ever been to the Rebel?
trajectory. There you go.
The Rebel?
Yeah, in Toronto.
I've been to what is now the Rebel.
Oh,
it used to be called
something
Sound
else.
Academy, yeah.
Yeah, it's like this huge kind of, you know, I don't know how to describe it, but we played there like 2 months ago or something.
Here?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Opening for that band Franz Ferdinand.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that you guys were... Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
It's crazy. They have like stripper poles in there. You know, it's
Yeah.
such a weird aesthetic. You know, and then it's like 70s gold, like macrame, like stuff. But then it's like wraparound plush couches and like, and then there's just wide open space and very like it's a strange feel. It doesn't know what it wants to be.
Yeah, you know, because it does serve as a nightclub on other nights and music venues. So,
Right. Yeah. So it's definitely like it was a funny contrast to be in there.
Yeah.
It's got a gorgeous view of the water. at the
Yeah,
back,
That's the one thing it has going for it, but it's also kind of in the middle of nowhere, so it's hard to get to.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. They warned us. There's no food around here.
Right.
Stop before you go in.
Like, I mean, I think you can get pizza, and that's about it. I know that a couple of members, at least a couple of members, come from a filmmaking background. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I actually make films, write and direct films. I have 2 full-length feature films online, streaming for free just on my Vimeo page, if anybody wants to check them out. Me and Nikki have this kind of DIY production company called Pretorius Pictures.
Cool.
So if anybody, you know, hears this and wants to check them out, you can just Google that and that'll pop up. We also, I did by far my most ambitious film, this sort of erotic thriller called Private Chat last February with some pretty cool people. Like Peter Vack is the lead. I don't know if you know who that is. Or
The name sounds familiar.
If you saw the last 2 Safdie brothers movies, you know Buddy Duress. He's in it. So hopefully that'll come out next year.
Yeah, I've acted in almost all of Ben's recent films, and I do a lot of art direction and things like that. Also, I directed most of our music videos, which we have going for it. And Ben, of course, like comes, you know, works with me and everything, but...
Yeah, I mean, the visual aesthetic of your band seems to play an important role, not just in your music videos, but also your live show. It's kind of what you guys are, one of the many things you guys are known for. Tell us a little bit about how that sort of filmmaking background kind of came into play and helped you in that stage production and whatnot.
Yeah, I mean, I think we wanted to create a world that when you stepped in, you'd kind of get a sense that this was something different than your regular rock show. You know, I built these light boxes. They were 4 screens. They're just blank, you know, white LED lights, and different than most, I think, rock shows is that they're pointing out to the crowd. And I get a lot of like pained expressions when I turn them on. People are like, like, you know, I can't, you know, like they're like vampires. They don't want to see the light during these like dark space, but you get really used to it. And then like slowly, like kind of like moths to the flame, like come around it, because white light is so hypnotizing, and we're so associated with it every day, like on your phones. And it's just like an interesting draw. So it's like when you walk into a show, you'll see those light boxes and you'll be drawn into the stage.
Well, it's interesting you bring that up. I know that technology, sort of the love-hate relationship of it specifically, is kind of an ongoing theme for the debut album. Tell us a little bit about that and why you sort of wanted to write songs, you know, that covered that theme.
I think when we sat down to write a collection of songs, we thought, what can we write that's most relevant to me and Nikki in particular? I was reflecting on it at work one day, and I was like, okay, I'm going to do my work on this computer. And then when I'm slacking off at work, I'm going to be doing something on the computer. When I come home, I might work on something for one of my films, either a script or an edit, which has to be on the computer.
Or porn.
Or yeah, if I'm leisurely watching some pornography to get a little release, that's on the computer. If I watch a movie, that's on the computer. I'm going to work on the band. I'm going to demo a song that's on the computer. So there's maybe 45 minutes of the day training to and from work where I wasn't on a computer. And so it just hit me like, wow, we've got to make a record about what modern life is like, which is mediated through a screen. So it started out like not really being like for or against it, you know. I do think social media in general does kind of tend to dull the senses and the wits of people. So that is one big aspect of the record. But also, me and Nikki got together through the internet. We both had pretty boring desk jobs, so we would be talking on Facebook chat like 8 hours a day. And I'm pretty sure that our intimacy could not have been possible had that, you know, digital space not been there. So that's kind of in the record too, I feel like. I don't.
You mentioned social media. I mean, I know a lot of people have a love-hate relationship with social media, and it's clear with Bodega, you guys kind of have sort of a bare bones, like your Instagram page and whatnot. It's not, you know, like endless postings here and there. And I know like in this day and age, that's kind of an important thing for a lot of bands. I mean, to have this presence, this online presence. How do you sort of navigate that? And, you know, like what do you guys sort of choose to like say, well, this is kind of interesting and I think sort of relevant as a band, as their brand? I know that it's kind of a shitty way of describing like a band, but I mean, it's the sort of reality, I guess. But
I mean, that's just kind of what it is. It's like a bare bone facts. Like, you know, I don't think either of us has the stomach for social media posting every day. Like I enjoy like doing a very curated, just like us, like our live shows and our art, like kind of look of what, you know, what Bodega is. And I feel like there's a lot of like jerking off on social media of like, you know, like look at us like having such a good time, and it's like, oh, whenever you see someone in this motion, you know, with the I'm just describe it like the hand up, you know, like twirling around, looking at their surroundings. Like I always just see it for what it is, like from like watching the person doing it. When I ever see like a video, and it's like it's a very like what's supposed to be an inclusive thing seems very separate, and I guess we don't really want to create that. We want to create something that is other without it being like sad, you know, or you feel
I think everything a band does should have should reflect the band's ideology. It should have a certain kind of poetry to it. So I think the best way to use social media is to use it aesthetically, to say something extra that the music can't, to give more context to the band. The girls do a pretty good job of trying to do some more of the visual stuff. I run, we have a Tumblr. I still think blogs are cool because you can kind of choose the colors, and it kind of feels like you just stumbled upon like somebody's like homemade zine or something. It feels more personal. So I really, you know, I think I love finding like a band's blog or something. There's pros and cons to it. I do think, you know, it is really tiring to read people's like kind of what Nikki was saying. I feel like a lot of our friends friends of friends of friends, I'll see bands on there saying stuff like, I want to thank all my fans for coming out last night. And I was there, it was like me and like the same 20 people that are at every show. Like it just feels weird to thank us on Facebook, I was happy to be there. I had a great time, but
I think
you cheapened it.
Yeah.
It is funny. It's like Ben has this great
personal.
phrase where it's like whenever like someone has a show, it's like they're accepting their Oscar. I would like to thank my parents, the venue, the booker, the promoter. You're like, no, don't. I mean, thank them in like privately, but this is like, like give something to the crowd. You don't need to be so polite and so like.
I mean, content is an interesting word because that's what the internet's for, is to give people content. And content has become like a dirty word, something to make fun of in a way. But that's because most content actually has no content. There's absolutely no information being delivered.
Yeah, you could just call it stuff.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I'm a stuff creator.
Yeah.
Yeah, wow.
Nikki, on the song Gyrate, it's got kind of an interesting story behind it. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, when I was trying to think of writing songs for this album, I just thought of like starting from the beginning with childhood memories. Kind of something that came up that I never really talked about was like my habit of masturbating in public when I was really young, like 4, 5, 6 years old. It's probably one of my first memories. So thinking back on that and like feeling like, I'm wondering like, why didn't I feel too much shame over it? And it's because I realized my parents used to say like, don't gyrate, not like masturbate. So when I got older, I didn't really associate it with the two. And only in like high school, I was like, whoa, that was weird, And it's funny, my parents don't even remember it. We brought it up and I was like so nervous and like shameful and like whatever when they actually heard the song and they're like, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't think I made it up. They definitely did it, But I think I stopped when I was like 6 years old because doing it in public, because it finally clicked, but also because I had been in the JCPenney's, like the jewelry counter, waiting, or perfume counter, waiting for my mom in this big chair, and I just like started doing it, and the lady came around the corner, shocked, and dropped the perfume, and I felt so much shame from that, and I think I just kept it. Then I stopped doing it in public after that, and it became an interesting, it's a very interesting visual. I'm just thinking, I don't know why I keep mentioning shame, but like shame, there's always such shame about masturbation, and I wondered why I felt so free, and then why I stopped, and it's like both are include that word.
Well, there's definitely sort of that towards young women that a lot of them are raised to be shameful about that kind of thing, which is
definitely
ridiculous, right? But
yeah.
Kudos to your parents for being like so cool about it and
definitely
being good parents, really.
Yeah, I've never felt shame about being like hypersexual. I think I just wanted to write a song. It's very like a simple like pop, using pop like words and aesthetic to like just give a kind of like a celebration of masturbation.
I think another one of my favorite lyrics from the album, how did this happen? You claim your playlists know you better than your closet lover. And I feel
closest.
like your closest lover, sorry.
Closet lover works too, though.
I think this is like maybe intended to be hyperbole, but sort of true. I mean, I kind of just nodded in agreement when I first heard that line. I don't know. Have you ever received a playlist or a mix CD from a lover that you were just like, this person doesn't know me at all? And if you could tell us about that, or just the opposite. I mean, if it was just so on point.
I think Ben should tell you about the line first, though, where he found it. It makes it interesting.
Yeah.
I was just riding the subway, and there was a Spotify ad that said, I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but it was essentially just like, our algorithms are going to know you better than your loved ones will. And I was like, that is so like 1984 dystopian or something. But that was literally the ad. And I was also like listening to Spotify, so it was like, oh my God. So, But to answer your question, you've got to, when someone gives you a playlist, they're offering you a little bit of themselves to you. So it's not up to you to say whether you like it or not. Because when I think when people make you a playlist, they're not making these songs thinking that you need to hear them. I mean, superficially, that's what's happening. But what they're saying is, these are songs that are important to me.
Right.
And if you want to get to know me, check these out. So you kind of got to be open-minded and think, what is it that this person likes about this track,
So then have you ever violently rejected?
I may have been like, well, this person's probably not gonna, have too many shared experiences with me if this is what they think is interesting. But I don't know.
How important is the person's music taste and more so compatibility with yours? Do you feel like it's essential for there to be any sort of potential in the relationship?
I feel like my lovers have always had excellent music taste. So I feel like I haven't gotten the other side. So I'm like, yeah, whatever, it's fine. But maybe it would bother me a lot more than I'd think.
I mean, I would take it a step further. I wouldn't want to date someone unless not only did they listen to the same music, but they played the same music as me. So, and just personally, what I want is someone who I can, be a co-creator. It's more fun that way. Yeah.
Let's backtrack and talk a little bit about your own sort of music tastes and sort of your journey with music. From the very beginning, when you guys first started listening to music as kids, what was playing around the house? Nikki, let's start with you.
Salt and Pepper, Madonna, B-52s, REM, and Kiss.
And this was stuff that your parents were playing, siblings?
Yes.
Okay.
My parents, I feel like I like my mom's taste way more than my dad's, which is like more like Kiss and like Styx and like Los Lonely Brothers, like really kind of things I've never gotten down with, but I can see that they're like interesting projects maybe. My mom, I think I take more from like, I guess I'm a little self-conscious about it because I'm never going to be the person that like, I feel like will name obscure artists in any way, like maybe just by off chance, like I found something, but like definitely the top 40, like, Madonna's and, Destiny's Child was my favorite growing up. I wanted to see them in concert so bad, but we just never went. And, like that was always my jam. And I think that's why I kind of want to make music like that now. Like I can see when now as a musician wanting to be a little bit more creative and bringing like different kinds of like, like power and energy towards like more worth to the music that I want to create. But at the same time, I still want to use like the language of Pop 40 to kind of like celebrate, but also like be like the strange hypocrisy of like the way that, I use Gyrate. It's like, you feel the vibes coming up through your like just kind of like the pop phrases and stuff, but some singing about masturbation. So I want to push that more actually in the future of like the contrast of like trying to say something interesting, but also using like this like top 40 pop speak.
And how about you, Ben?
Advertising speak.
Yeah. There's something really fascinating about it to me.
My groundbreaking moment in getting into rock and roll music was seeing a Korn music video when I was like 9 or 10. And I think it's because I was so obsessed with movies. They were on a spaceship, and it was like very sci-fi, and just like how angsty it was, it really connected with me. But, I've been playing in bands my whole life, basically. I've been in probably 20 bands. A lot of them are really terrible, and some of them are pretty good. But, kind of, I've now that I'm 30, I've looked back on the last 20 years of being in bands and have seen how my own individual creativity has been so much influenced by just like the zeitgeist of whatever popular rock music was happening around me. It's like I haven't really thought for myself. I've just been thought. Like, I'll give you an example. Like when I first moved to Brooklyn, Animal Collective was all the rage, and every band was like looping stuff and just like whoop whoop, and I had 2 bands like that. And then I was in like a shoegazy kind of band when I feel like that was in vogue. And then, there was kind of a garage rock backlash against that with Ty and the OCs and stuff. And I was drumming in some bands like that. And in some very like 90s sounding bands. And I feel to a certain extent what Bodega is doing is sort of, that kind of more angular post-punk sound is, I don't know. I thought that, okay, I'm going to do a band like that now. But now I notice so many bands popping up like that, and I'm like, wow, I really just didn't, it's not my idea at all.
Well, it's interesting, that kind of thing where you're like, I feel like you just tapped into the social consciousness, like that, 2016 rolled along, and there's a lot of inner turmoil, and people are like, wanting words with like intention and meaning, and they want like maybe a little harsher and more like energetic music, you know. So it's like I feel like you're feeding not only from the moment but from your personal taste that you've curated.
Right.
over
No,
the years.
I think it's formally the music that can convey sort of intellectual ideas best. You know, a tight groove, and the lyrics are like super direct. I was kind of making a joke, but I do think at least I think it's a healthier way to think about creativity. Is not like this individual genius thing where you pull ideas out of thin air or are struck by lightning.
Yeah.
Like-
Well, a lot of things are sort of happening simultaneously. Other people are taking in similar stimuli and trying to be first, but then everyone kind of arrives there sort of like around the same time. Like everyone's trying to invent the light bulb. And then, you know, there's a couple people that have that, right?
Yeah.
It works, yeah.
Austin Brown from Parquet Courts produced the album. Tell us how he got involved.
He just came to a show actually because the drummer for Parquet Courts had a side project band, and it was their first show, and they happened to be playing the same bar as us. And he just kind of liked the set, and we were talking, and he said, you know, have you guys recorded any of these songs? They're really great. And I was like, no. And he goes, well, you know, I have kind of a home studio set up in the Parquet Courts practice space now for us to do like really high-end demos. And basically I was like, okay, well, we'll do that, and you can produce our album. Then like 2 months later, he did it. And obviously I'm a big fan of Parquet Courts, so it was kind of a dream come true in a way. Their album, Light Up Gold, was recorded on this 8-track 388 Tascam. And that's one of my favorite records of the last 20 years or so. So I said, you know, do you still have that tape deck? And he's like, yeah, I haven't used it since then. It's just in the closet. But he got it out, dusted it off, and you know, we bought the reels of tape and recorded it on that same tape deck. So to me, it kind of, not that we wanted it to sound anything like Light Up Gold, but we wanted to spiritually kind of have the tape have to touch the same machine and go through the same, you know, spools or whatever.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. I mean, I think like the to speak of earlier of how you want sort of this pop, like top 40 pop sound, not sound, but that sort of approach. I think that's one of the great things about your record is that it is very accessible, even though you can call it art rock, you can call it punk rock, whatever, but it very much feels, and because you guys have so many like great, like quotable lines, I feel like anyone could sort of get into it, even if that might not be necessarily what they listen to.
Yeah, I think there's a lot more rap elements in it
Right.
than any of the post-punk bands from like the 80s. You know, it's like a really bass-driven, heavy kind of like lines that repeat and repeat and repeat, which, you know, I feel like gets like that, you know, Ben purposely has crafted, you know, with the idea behind that, like it's like it becomes very danceable.
Mm-hmm. One of the most fun tracks off the album, Jack
and Titanic.
Jack and Titanic. Are you guys Titanic fans yourselves, or?
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a really fun movie. You guys not like Titanic?
I'm one of those people that's kind of a hater, and I appreciate it as a film because it's incredible to look at. I just thought it was. I remember watching this movie with my sister, and I mean, we're much older than you guys.
We don't
but
say how old are you, because I feel like it's a generational thing. Like,
yeah,
you grew up with
no,
it.
we.
You know?
I mean, we grew up with it too. Like, I mean, I think I was like.
Did your
maybe
mothers cover
18.
your eyes when you?
No,
were
I was much older because I was like
much
18
older.
or 19.
Yeah.
But I just remember that scene where Jack is. Maybe I'm heartless, but when Jack is like dying, just the way Leonardo DiCaprio cries is like hilarious to me and just also kind of annoying. So I just remember my sister and I laughing hysterically, and I think we just ruined it for everyone in that theater.
But
We're
he's
being
not
such
crying
jerks.
because he's frozen.
He's frozen, right? But he's
can't have
shivering
tears.
and just
It's
like
so poetic.
his voice. We're jerks, I know.
I mean, the thing about that song for me is I saw that movie when I was like 10 years old, I think. And that was literally the first time I'd seen breast of a naked woman before.
Right.
It wasn't my mother. So it was like kind of a ground zero moment. I think a lot of friends my age had the same experience. But also,
Me too.
I think I learned how to be a man, and I'm saying man in air quotes, from that character. Like, you know, to me, it's kind of like the archetype. I was really thinking about this. Wow, even the way I think about being like a rock and roll guy, or a DIY renegade filmmaker, I think of myself as Jack in Titanic, where it's like, you know, I don't have any funds, but I can kind of manipulate the classes with enough suaveness, kind of know how to fight, I can draw very well, like Jack in Titanic. I can, I'm an incredible sensualist, but can also have fun, can be like a hard partier and a drinker, but also get the work done. There's like so many good qualities about that character, but that are so like blown out of proportion. He's just so perfect in that movie.
He says a lot of Bob Dylan quotes.
Yeah, he does.
It's like a tumbleweed blowing in the wind.
I never thought about all
Such a
those things. That's
poet.
crazy.
Yeah, I think
maybe
James,
it's time to revisit Titanic.
It's worth the watch.
James Cameron isn't like the best dialogue,
Right.
person in the world, but like he lifts a lot of like the best lines from Bob Dylan from Jack.
On the song, I am not a cinephile. I mean, you guys come from a filmmaking background, so is that just sort of tongue in cheek?
Well, I am a cinephile, but there are a lot of negative aspects about cinephilia. There are different kinds of cinephilia, But I think one that I don't particularly like is where you have to like. There's a cinephilia where anything that's on a screen inherently has value, and you see this a lot in how cinephiles talk about classic Hollywood. I mean, let's be real. A lot of classic Hollywood is totally garbage, very superficial. And arguably has done a lot of ill for this world by spreading these false kind of imperialist myths and sexist myths and these things like that. Yeah. But yet we still revere these films, because they were up on the screen and they were a part of history and they have so much influence, visual culture or whatever. And you see that now where like a new film will come out and people will talk about the director as some kind of auteur artist just because he has a recognizable style. That kind of cinephilia is gross to me. I don't know. There's another story I've told before that I think is really funny where I was going to Film Forum, which is a repertoire theater in New York, and the MoMA, because they show movies all day long, great old movies on archival prints. And I would see the same 4 guys every day, and it would just be the 5 of us in the theater, and they're, it's a lot of kind of, diehard cinephiles. If you talk to these people, they're like going to catch 6 movies a day, and that's literally all they do with their time. And I went through a phase where I was kind of doing stuff like that, like right after college. And I was like, are these people losers? Do they have no friends? And then I realized, oh my God, I'm one of them. That to me is like the tragedy of cinephilia. I mean, their story and mine at the time is kind of a metaphor for it's kind of the same thing as social media. It's like if you're spending that much time living through other people's images, you might be better just going. Also, I don't understand. You can't retain that information. Like I went to this Ozu film festival and I saw, I think every Ozu film in like 3 weeks. And at the time is because I was such a cultural consumer that I wanted to be able to check off everyone off the list and be able to brag and say, I've seen all 53 Ozu features or whatever. I think a lot of them have been lost, so maybe it's not that many. Maybe it's like 35 or something. But now when I think back on it, I mean, it was a very valuable experience and I feel like I really lived in his films, but I can't, all of his plots are kind of the same anyway. There's only maybe like 5 or 6 that really stick out in my mind. And I think what would have been a much more valuable experience is if I would have watched one of them and then went for a walk and really thought about it. And then maybe had to wait and see another one like a week later or something. Instead of watching 6 in one day. It's just something so stupid about that.
Yeah, you're definitely a cinephile.
What was I supposed to get out of that? I don't know.
I think one of the worst things about American cinema, or it's like how we educate the audience to watch it. Like I feel like films in America, particularly, or maybe worldwide, or like certain places, that it's a very like pacifistic event. You're supposed to tune in, turn off, sit down, turn off, and then you leave and you're like, that was nice, I enjoyed myself, or I didn't enjoy myself. There's no like, I don't feel like on the broader sense, there's no real like conversation of like how to watch a film. Most popular films, there's nothing to really talk about anyways. So
well, I disagree with you. There's always something to talk about.
Always something to talk about, yeah. Even it's a bad film, there's always a reflection on where society's at.
Bad films are sometimes way more informative than good films.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
yeah. And with that, what's like one bad film that you or individually think that is great, for other merits? Maybe it's like entertainingly bad.
Showgirls.
Showgirls. I was once at a bar where they had Showgirls on TV, and
Captivating.
there was no sound. They just had it closed captions.
You
So
couldn't
to
look away.
actually read Showgirls was even more insane than just watching it regularly.
But wait, you're saying, I think you the way you talk about it, I think you think Showgirls is actually a great film.
I do.
You think it's really well directed, and
Oh, I do, but it's a notoriously known as a bad film. Like, that's so bad it's good.
yeah, I mean, I remember Rivette, thinking that it was the greatest film of the '90s. That's a guy who knows cinema.
But I guess when it came out,
The Eberts of the world and stuff like that.
Yeah. It was panned, and she lost her job. The actress, what's her name? Elizabeth Berkley. Like,
Yes.
she didn't have a career in film anymore. I mean, I think it's a shame. I mean, like, it was definitely like, it took many, many years and many, many underground screenings for it to like gain any kind of recognition whatsoever. So when it was introduced to me like 10 years ago, it was like, this is the worst film you'll ever see. That's like the best. And now I don't even agree. Like, I don't even know why people even introduce it as that. The Room, you could say that.
Right.
But
I will actually say that The Room is actually a really interesting film. There's a really good...
Wait, but that's what we're saying. It's like, what is notoriously panned as a bad film, but then you come to it and you're like, this is incredible.
The Room does what a good film should do, is that it's a personal vision from one person, and it may be a completely, just completely mind-blowingly stupid worldview. But there's no one else who could have made that movie.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that makes it kind of more valuable than any cookie cutter, well-crafted big Hollywood movie.
Right.
I read an article about Richard Brody. I don't know if you guys read him. He's my absolute favorite guy writing about films now. But he wrote about how The Room is a better movie than the James Franco movie. And he goes, it's obviously better crafted, but it was original. And it was a reflection of that guy's soul, which is obviously a very dark, superficial place. But, whereas we know nothing about James Franco by watching his movie.
That is very true. In closing, the name Bodega, here in Canada, we just call them convenience store, corner store, whatever. Nobody really calls it Bodega here.
And is there a band called that?
There is a band. I was going to ask you that. There's a band called Bodega in Canada. I don't think they're no longer together. And then there's a band in Scotland called Bodega. So I feel like it's very difficult when you look for your band on streaming services. All these other ones show up, and I always have to tell people, oh no, it's the New York one. So have you guys thought about ahead as to like, do you think you're going to alter the name, keep it? What are the plans on that?
We used to have this band called Bodega Bay, which was a reference to the city in Hitchcock's Birds, another cinephile thing. But then we got all new members, and our sound is very different now. So now we're just Bodega. I found out about that Scotland band, but they're referring to something different. A bodega is a type of instrument. So they're not referring to the corner store. And I don't think the Canadian band is either.
I don't think they would either. Yeah. That doesn't make sense.
I think there's a lot of Spanish bands called Bodega because in Spain, a wine cellar, a particular wine cellar on a ship or a boat, I think, is called a bodega.
That's where it originated.
Yeah, I think that's like the first use of the word that we know of.
Yeah, in Spain, I think wine shops are bodegas, and then in I think South America, they're actual like corner stores too. So and then in Scotland, which is why it's a bunch of like Scottish like bagpipe people or like like more traditional instruments, is like the bodega is like the bag in the bagpipe.
Actual
Yeah, or it's a piece or something. There's I can't remember exactly.
Yeah, I think it just we would have such different audiences that I don't think anyone would be confused. They wouldn't go to the record store and say, "I want to hear this traditional Scottish music," and then accidentally get like a pop rock.
I guess the only time it'd be a conflict is if one of those bands actually tries to pursue it in court. And I mean that's what
why
happens.
Would they? Wouldn't they like because they disbanded and things like that?
Right, exactly. But I think what happened in like the late 90s, there's a little known Canadian band called Bush. So when Bush really kind of came to prominence, they took him to court over that, and they had to call Bush X in Canada. So there's always Bodega X.
Dinosaur Jr.'s like that too.
Right.
They had to add the Junior.
Yeah.
We could be Bodega Junior. That'd be pretty stupid. Bodega X would be pretty badass.
Let's keep working on it.
Yeah.
So you guys are playing tonight at Rivoli. Where are you going after this?
We're going to Cleveland tomorrow.
Cleveland.
Yeah, but we'll be all throughout the Midwest for the next 2 weeks. Then we're going to Europe for 2 or 3 weeks, and then we're doing the West Coast for 2 or 3 weeks.
And the album is out next month.
July 6th.
Endless Scrolls, guys, pick it up. Great record. One of my favorites this year. Thank you guys so much for being on the show.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're always endlessly scrolling.
Yeah.
Thanks. You've been listening to Season 2, Episode 10 of This Broken Mixtape featuring Benji Hozie and Nikki Belfiglio of New York art punk band Bodega. For more goodies, visit thisbrokenmixtape.com to check out this episode's Spotify playlist. There you'll also find our past interviews and custom illustrations for each show. Please take the time to subscribe, rate, and share our podcast whoever you're tuning into us today. That would be really amazing, and we truly appreciate all the support of our loyal listeners. Also, if you have any comments, feedback, or ideas for guests, feel free to drop us a line through our website, Instagram, or Twitter. Next week's guest will be multidisciplinary designer Simone Ferkel. Thanks for listening. We really appreciate it. Cheers.